Okay, I haven't seen the participant number change much for a bit, so I think it's a good sign that it's a great time to get started. Um, I want to start off by thanking you all for joining us this afternoon for a webinar on BayAdapt currents, metrics that move with the tides. I want to start off by introducing myself. I'm Corey Copeland, the Adapting to Rising Tides Data and Science Manager at BCDC. I'm also joined by Dana Breckwald, the Assistant Planning Director for Climate Adaptation, and Katie Fallon, environmental scientist, whose work is primarily responsible for the development of the platform we're talking about today. Before we get started, I do want to offer a couple of quick thank yous to some organizations that helped make this possible for us. I want to start off by thanking the State Coastal Conservancy, who partially funded this project, which made this possible. I also want to thank some of the organizations that in the early development of this gave us support during some interviews with them on what made their similar metric dashboard successful. So I hope I may forget some organizations. Apologies if I do, but I want to thank MTC, the Delta Stewardship Council, OPR, SCAG, and any others who offered us some of their insights. And so, yeah, with that, we're going to get started. So, we're going to kick off by doing just a little bit of background on the risk of sea level rise to the San Francisco Bay region. I'll talk about the region's initiative to try to address this, named BayAdapt. And after that, we'll get into a demonstration of the dashboard that will be led by Katie Fallon. At the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. So why do we care about sea level rise? Why is there so much effort being put into thinking about this? It is extremely important to the San Francisco Bay region, but also has massive statewide implications for how we adapt to sea level rise. So in the San Francisco, in California, 2/3 of sea level rise impacts are going to be felt in the Bay Area based on a 2020 estimate. This will impact tens of thousands of vulnerable residents, major transportation corridors that have highway traffic, daily rail, hundreds of thousands of new and planned jobs could be impacted, as well as tens of thousands of units of residence. And of course, we're dealing with potentially significant risk to the degree of tens of thousands of acres of wetlands being flooded out by sea level rise, which support the San Francisco Bay, one of the most important natural resources in the state of California. We have estimated that this will cost the region in terms of assets that could be exposed to sea level rise just through 2050, $230+ billion. So the cost of inaction would be quite substantial. The cost of adaptation itself is also quite substantial at $96 billion, although I like to say that we can buy $2 with $1 by investing in San Francisco Bay sea level rise adaptation. So every one of those dollars should have a over 100% return in aggregate. So it's very important that we successfully adapt in this region and needed to develop efforts in order to do that. The effort, a kind of region-wide effort that developed to help with adaptation is BayAdapt, which was an initiative that was spearheaded by BCDC to establish a regional agreement on the actions necessary to protect people and the natural and built environment from rising sea levels. In practice, the effort involved creating the joint platform, which is a consensus-based platform on the things that major regional actors, local, state, federal, all agreed need to occur in order to help the region quickly, effectively, and equitably adapt to sea level rise in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's divided across 5 categories. People, which focuses on improving our capacity and ability to adapt. Information, which is having the best possible information and science for adaptation. plans, which means having good coordinated action on this, and then projects, which is the nitty-gritty things getting done on the ground. In order to make progress on all of these things possible, it was determined within the platform that we need to start tracking, transparently tracking progress towards achievement of these goals. And so that's the impetus of the development of Bay Adapt Currents, whose goals are to give a complete picture of sea level rise adaptation progress in the San Francisco Bay to partners and the public using transparent, understandable, and visually compelling dashboard. And the Bay Adapt Currents dashboard that we'll be talking about today is kind of the realization of this vision. So we're going to provide a demo on this. And so the demo will answer a number of questions that you might have. Most basic questions like, how do I get to the dashboard? If I'm interested in information on it, how can I access the underlying data? If you are a more technical or scientific user, if you want to delve into the methodology or even potentially reproduce our results, we'll talk about how you can do that. What do you do if you find an error or have other feedback that you want to provide us? And how often is it updated? So our demo is going to go through all of these things and hopefully set you all up to make great use of the dashboard. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to environmental scientist Katie Fallon to provide that demonstration.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, that was a great overview of Bay Adapt, and now I'm going to switch over to Google because first we'll explore how you can find the dashboard. The dashboard can be found online, and one of the easiest ways to find it is by searching Bay Adapt in Google. If you search Bay Adapt, the first result should be for the Bay Adapt website. If you click on the website link, you will be taken to the Bay Adapt homepage. From the homepage, there are a few ways you can access the Bay Adapt currents. There's a rotating carousel, so you can access it through here, or you can go under Actions and click on Bay Adapt metrics that move with the tides. Alternatively, if you search Bay Adapt currents in Google, the first result will take you straight to this page, but if you want to go through the Bay Adapt website, that's how you access it. This page gives a quick overview of the dashboard and the topics covered and provides direct links to each of the dashboard pages. For example, if you know you're interested in how sea level rise is covered in the news, you can click on the direct link to that page here in the information description, and it will take you directly to that page in the dashboard. Otherwise, to be taken to the landing page of the Bay Adapt Currents, you will select the big Go to Bay Adapt Currents button, and this will take you away from the Bay Adapt website. So you can return, it might take a second to load. I'm going to make it bigger to make sure you all can see it. But you can return to the bayadapt.org by hitting this blue button in the upper right-hand corner. The landing page has links to each of the 11 currents organized by the 5 topic areas that Corey just mentioned that are laid out in the Bay Adapt joint platform. Clicking on people, information, plans, projects, or progress buttons will bring you back to the Bay Adapt website to the page that describes the actions and tasks on the joint platform under that topic. These are good pages to visit if you want to better understand how the currents link back to the goals of the joint platform. On the bottom of the page, we have a suggested citation that we ask people to use if they pull information from the dashboard for their own use. It also includes an acknowledgement to the State Coastal Commission, who provided much of the funding for this dashboard. And finally, every page in the dashboard has this question mark button in the bottom left-hand corner. This button takes you to a page that walks users through how to navigate the dashboard. I won't spend too long on this page as this is what we are going to walk you through during this presentation. But if you ever need a refresher, know that you can return here to help them learn more about how to navigate the dashboard. All right, now let's get into the contents of the currents. So the first metric we will look at shows data on public opinion on climate change and how it has changed in the last decade. This data comes from the Yale program on climate change communication and is produced annually. On the graph, the red lines represent each of the 9 Bay Area counties. The orange line is a weighted average based on population of all the Bay Area counties. The green line is California as a whole, and the blue line is the United States. If you are interested in highlighting a particular county, you can select it from the legend. For example, by selecting Solano, we can see that belief in climate change in Solano County is on par with that of the nation as a whole. So it highlights the Solano County line. I will demonstrate this multiple times throughout the tutorial, but this is one of the major advantages of the dashboard. It allows users to customize or highlight the data that they are most interested in. Now that we have finished exploring this metric, you might ask yourself, how can you get to the next metric? You have 2 options. You can either click on this blue back arrow in the top left-hand corner, which will return you to the landing page, or you can click on this hamburger menu to the left. When opened, the hamburger menu provides buttons that will take you to all of the other pages in the currents. However, if you decide you want to stay on this page you are currently on, you can either press anywhere in the grayed out section of the page or click on this little back tab and it will take you back to the page. However, now instead of closing it, we are going to head to the next metric under people that looks at perception of local officials' action on climate change. Here we can see that 62% of Bay Area residents, let's zoom in a little more, see. Okay. Here we can see that 62% of Bay Area residents believe local officials should be doing more to combat climate change, significantly higher than the nation as a whole. Like the previous metric, much of this data comes from the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication, which is updated annually. While update frequencies vary from metric to metric, they are based on how frequently the underlying source data is updated. All data sets are updated between every few months to annually. If you want to know when a data set was last updated and uploaded to Power BI, it is included on each page in the bottom right-hand corner. So here you can see that the data was last updated in May of 2025. It is important to note that this is when the data was last updated, but it's not necessarily when the page was last updated. Every once in a while, we will make a minor update to the page that does not change the underlying data. Those changes are not reflected in the data last updated date. In addition to having information from the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication, this metric also has data from the Public Policy Institute of California statewide survey from 2024. That survey found that 9 in 10 Bay Area residents believe reducing flood risk by helping regions prepare for new flood patterns is very or somewhat important. This speaks to the importance of adapting to sea level rise and BCDC's work on the Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan, which we have a few upcoming webinars on as well. So encourage people to attend those. Finally, under the people category, we have a metric that tracks all of the programs that exist to train Bay Area residents in sea level rise adaptation and climate and environmental justice more broadly. We can see that over the last decade, through these programs, over 1,000 participants have been trained and over $1 million have been put into the pockets of Bay Area residents to learn about these issues. If you're interested in knowing about a single year, 2021, for example, you can click on that year's bar and the graphic to the left will update to show you the information on that year. Throughout the dashboard, to deselect a selection, you click on the selection again to clear it. So this pretty much applies for anything. If you select anything, you can select it again to clear it. Unlike the last 2 metrics, which synthesize already publicly available data in ways that are easy for users to understand, data for this metric was directly gathered by BCDC staff from community-based organizations. Representatives from each of the 15 programs listed on the map were interviewed and asked to provide program information. The map gives a brief description of the program, who it is hosted by, and if the program has a regional focus or a sub-regional focus. While we have tried to create as complete of a data set as possible, if you know of a program that you think should be included in this that you don't see, please email us at baycurrents@bcdc.ca.gov. On that note, each page has a box, usually in the bottom right-hand corner, where it invites users to email us if they have any questions or feedback. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or notice a graphic is not performing as it should be. All right. So next, we are going to move on and look at metrics in the information category. So this first metric looks at research into sea level rise in the Bay Area over the last half century. Unsurprisingly, research into sea level rise has increased sharply in the last 15 years. This metric also provides information on the top institutions and provides a breakdown on the data by location. So it can tell you either the percentage that's in California, elsewhere in the United States, or published internationally. And for example, if a user is only interested in articles where the main author institution was California, you can click on the California portion of the pie chart to isolate that information in both the tables and the graphs. We can see here that the top California publishing institution since 1980 is UC Berkeley, followed by UC Davis. At the bottom of the page, you are also provided with the list of the articles that apply to your selection, what journal they were in, and the year of publication. While it doesn't directly link to the articles, users can take this information and easily go look up articles they are interested in. Additionally, if you want to use the graph of California data, you could either take a screenshot of this or you can click the focus mode button that appears in the top right-hand corner of the graph when you hover over it. I zoomed in, but this will give you a larger isolated version of the graph for you to pull. To go back to the main metric page, you just hit this back to report button in the top right-hand corner. Now let's look at the media coverage of sea level rise over the last few years. On average, 3 articles about sea level rise are published daily in the Bay Area, with the San Francisco Chronicle as the biggest reporter. If you want to know about a specific year, like 2024, you can click on this button to the right, and the data will update to reflect only data from 2024. You can see that in 2024, only 2 articles a day address sea level rise. Data for this metric comes from Media Cloud, which is an open source platform that allows users to track attention over time and export the data for their own analysis. If you're interested in learning more about a metric or data source, you can visit that metric's data sheet. Each metric has its own data sheet. Each metric has this link at the bottom of the page, this info button, and if you click on the info button, it will take you to that metric's data sheet. The data sheet will give users additional information on why this is something we have chosen to track, what the data source is, a brief overview of our methods, and what the update schedule is. As you can see, some metrics like this one are easier to update than others. To update this metric, BCDC staff just need to rerun a Python script. And for that reason, this metric has a more frequent update schedule than some of the others, like the Yale climate change science data, which only comes out annually. Finally, each dataset also has a link to a BayAdapt Currents GitHub, which you can access by following this link. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with GitHub, GitHub is an online platform that allows users to store, manage, and share their data. For more technical users who may want to take this data and perform their own analysis, GitHub allows you to access the data and/or code without having to request it from BCDC. The BayAdapt Currents GitHub repository has a README that briefly summarizes the contents, along with folders for each of the metrics. For example, if we look at the media coverage folder, we can see that it has its own README with a more in-depth methodology on our analysis than the data sheet. It also provides links to the Excel spreadsheets, you can see them here, that we created, as well as the Python scripts that helped create those spreadsheets. So here, a user can open this script and see it if they want to use the code. Something to note that is if you navigate to the GitHub from the currents, it will just open a new window in your browser. So to get back to the currents, you can just press on the Microsoft Power BI tab. That should be right next to it. From the data sheet, you can click on the Return to Metric button in the bottom right-hand corner to get back to the main dashboard. All right, the next metric we are going to look at tracks how often sea level rise is mentioned in policies and programs in city general plans. This graph includes policies that directly mention sea level rise in this teal color and ones that more broadly mention flood risk in blue. So we can see that of the 55 Bay Area cities that are at risk for sea level rise inundation by 2100, 45 of them directly talk about sea level rise, while additional 10 do not. Data for this metric and the next metric were collected by our 2024 summer intern, Ben Witek, and have recently been updated by our 2025 summer intern, Cecilia Rodriguez. The updates that Cecilia made have not yet been added to the dashboard, but should be available on this page in the coming days. So come back if you want to see a few new updated cities. Data for this metric and the next this data can be sliced by county. For example, if you're only interested in Alameda County, you can select the Alameda County button and the data will update. As we can see, Berkeley is the only city in Alameda County that does not directly mention sea rise in their general plan. This is likely because Berkeley's general plan has not been updated since the early 2000s. We also performed an analysis of what subtopics were considered in sea level rise and flooding policies. So here we can see of the 10 Alameda cities, 7 mention nature-based solutions, 4 mention equity, and only 2 mentioned groundwater hazard as well. This can help us better understand how comprehensive of a look cities took at sea level rise in their general plans. In addition to these 3 that are highlighted, there are many additional categories analyzed in the pie charts below. So I encourage people to spend some time looking at this because there's a lot in there. All right. Now we'll navigate to the time horizons metric. This metric comes from the same analysis performed by our BCDC interns and looks at what water levels cities are planning for at what time horizons and how that planning aligns with the 2024 State of California Sea Level Guidance. We can see from the graph to the right that most cities are planning for future sea level rise scenarios that are in line with or beyond what the 2024 State of California Sea Level Guidance recommends. So these red lines are the 3 scenarios outlined in the State of California Sea Level Rise Guidance. We can see from the graph on the right that if you are curious what cities are planning for what futures, you can hover over one of the dots and it will tell you. So for example, we can see here that Benicia, San Rafael, Sausalito, and Tiburon are all planning for 5 feet of sea level rise by 2100. This is pretty much in line with the intermediate high scenario in the 2024 State of California Sea Level Rise Guidance, which predicts 4.9 feet by 2100. As an aside, in most graphics and visuals throughout the currents, you can hover over a visual to get more information. For example, if you hover over the source chart that's down here, it will give you more information on the sources that are listed. And that's really true throughout the dashboard. So there's often more data than you can even see right off the bat. Okay, next we are going to go to the sediment data sheet. So this metric looks at dredge sediment that has been used for wetland restoration in the last 25 years. We can see that 33 million cubic yards of sediment have been placed since 2000, nearly 7% of the way to the region's goal of 447 million cubic yards by 2100. Using dredge sediment for wetland restoration not only can help restore wetlands and boost biodiversity, but it offers a natural protection to sea level rise and storms for shoreline communities. Similar to previous metrics, this data can be broken down regionally. For example, if you're only interested in Suisun Bay, you can select it to see data for only that sub-embayment. The table and overall cubic yards also update to reflect this selection. Or if you were interested in seeing data for only the bay and excluding the outer coast, you can control click and select all of the sub-embayments besides the outer coast. Again, to clear a selection, you just click on an already selected section one more time and it will clear that selection. Another way to slice this data is if you want to know about a particular project, say Montezuma Phase 1, you can click on that project to see what year's sediment was placed there at the project site. And similar to the sub-embayments, you can do a control click if you wanted to know about all of the Montezuma phases, so you can see that sediment has been placed continuously since 2011 and also was placed in the early 2000s. All right. Our next metric looks at funding, how much money has been forecasted for sea level rise adaptation in the San Francisco Bay and where it is coming from. So Plan Bay Area 2050 updated the adaptation needs forecasted, originally forecasted in the sea level rise funding and investment framework from 110 billion to 96 billion. The green line represents the funding trajectory we would need to be on to reach 96 billion by 2050, while the blue line represents the amount of public funding we currently have identified for sea level rise adaptation. While it is clear we are not on track to reach 96 billion of funding by 2050, Bay Area and California voters have stated that adaptation is a priority to them, passing Measure A in 2016 and Prop 4 in 2024. Prop 4 earmarks 1.2 billion for sea level rise adaptation. This graph lower down breaks down that 6.5 billion we have forecasted by funder type. If you want to know even more about the funding source, you can click on the funder and we'll highlight the funder details. So here, if I click on federal, I can click on this funder details button and go to this graph, and it shows you broken down by agency where most of that funding is coming from. So we can see that a majority of sea level rise funding forecasted for the San Francisco Bay Area is coming from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. To go back to the main metric page, you just click on the green arrow in the upper left-hand corner. All right, this next metric looks at completed adaptation projects in the San Francisco Bay Area. I want to mention that we are unfortunately having some technical difficulties relating to displaying the map recently. It was showing fine until a few days ago. I'm working with our IT person, and this should hopefully be resolved soon. However, I've opened the internal version so you all can see what the map should look like. So this is what the map would look like, and it places the projects that have been finished in the last since 1995, and then you can hover over a project and it will show you the name of the project, the acres of habitat, what was the main funding source, and the amount of funding that was provided for that project. Hopefully, the next time you all check this will be back. But since 1995, 75 adaptation projects covering 44,000 acres have been completed, and over half of the acreage has been completed in the last decade. So we can see there's been a major uptick in completed adaptation projects. All right, we're on to the last metric. All right, lastly but not least, we have a page that lists all of the other metrics and monitoring reporting efforts that we know of that exist in the Bay, with a link to their pages so people can explore those as well. A big focus of ours was to try not and redo existing efforts, to help link all of these efforts in one place. If you know of an effort that should be included on this page, please let us know. And that concludes our demonstration. Thank you so much for listening.